I'm just stopping on my way up to Liverpool now. I've been to Derby, met with Mr. Gordon Bowden. Now, some of the things of it, I sat with the man. I couldn't stop listening to him. I was probably with him for about 3 hours. Obviously, can't put all that in the film. So what I would say is, it's all there. It's all on the internet. Go and check it. Just put in his name. The man's obviously a patriot. I mean, I've seen him called everything: conspiracy theorist, anti-Semite, raving lunatic, everything. Well, all I can say is the man was a very nice, very personable, pleasant chap. Had a good chat. I'm not going to give my opinion of anything he said, but please, I urge you to check it out. If the tiniest fraction of it's true, well, my opinion is we're run by a mafia anyway. They're just a posh, privileged mafia, absolute thieves. So he never said nothing that I don't think anyway. But some of the revelations were absolutely shocking. So yeah, well, that's it then. Make your own minds up. Go on the internet while we've still got it before they steal that. But that'll be the next thing that will go. And just make your own minds up. See what the man has to say. And as I say, if it's a fraction of it's true, they need their heads taken off and parading around Traitors Gate.
We're going to speak about stuff that Gordon's been working on for, what is it now, Gordon?
14 years.
14 years.
Yeah, 14.
Could you tell us a little of your own background, please?
Yeah, I'm an ex-Royal Air Force engineer. I joined up just before I was 18. Served at bases all over the United Kingdom, overseas in Persian Gulf, Cyprus, Malta, Germany for 3 years, frontline bases, facing the onslaught of the Russians, but never saw action there. I did see a bit of action in Cyprus when the Turks invaded, and went through 2 coups with Archbishop Macarius. However, shot at a few times, but that was the extent of my military action.
So, but you've served your country, you worked for your country.
I loved it.
RAF, yes. And well, I suppose just get to the point now, and why we're here, and what you have to say, and what you found out over the years.
Well, it came about by accident, and he said back in 2001, following my divorce, I got together with a nice lady who lost her husband with cancer, and she was persuaded by a long-time family investment broker to invest her life savings and her late husband's savings, which was there as a stopgap provider for her children, to invest in this capital venture investment. $50,000. Not a lot in the greater sense of monetary, world monetary, amounts, but it meant a lot to them because they'd saved it up over a long period of time.
Of course, yeah.
And it was supposed to be for a short 3-month investment, and after 3 months, my partner then went back to her broker, and he said, "There's a problem." And he explained to her that the money was safe being moved around, and would she consider investing for another 3 months with a higher reward on the investment, which was 30%. Now I was say I knew nothing about this. However, after the next 3 months, the problem still existed, and my partner called me aside and said, "What do you think is happening with my investment?" And I said, "Well, show me what you signed." And she showed me the paperwork. I had a good look at it. Within 10 minutes I said, "Your money's gone. This is a fraud." And that's with my experience in documents and my ability to understand that you don't sign $50,000 away and have just a mobile phone. And so I then took her to the bank to see an investment broker in the bank. He made some discreet telephone calls while she was in the toilet, and he said to me, "Scott, it's a massive scam." So we then employed 2 attorneys of law to conduct a civil recovery and a money trail dossier, which extended for 2 years. After that 2 years, from 2000 up to 2002, because there were other victims involved, the two attorneys of law then presented the documents to the South African elite Scorpions anti-corruption team. Because there were many people involved within the names on the fraud documents linked to South African intelligence services. So then my interest into this all started because we were now looking at the old apartheid military government, because they were the senior officers that I had found looking at some of the paperwork. And so that was the start, my awakening into understanding how a group of con artists linked to the intelligence services of apartheid government could set about structuring companies in the United Kingdom, which were the conduit for stealing over $130 million. That was the start. And so I brought about South Africa's top private investigator, a guy called Christian Botha. He then assisted me in the recovery of documents linked to the people on the fraud documentation, and they recovered personal information on past civil cases for fraud, theft, money laundering and organised crime. That's the start. The conduit companies were through an accountancy agency in London at 5 Harley Street. So you're talking the top end of Harley Street. One of the company was called Smallfield Cody and Co. Smallfield Cody and Co. Smallfield Cody and Co. When I did some checking, had launched over 113 companies, and those 113 companies had a previous registration from 788, 790 Finchley Road, every one of them, and linked to billion-pound organised crime, linked to various senior politicians. The one controlling corporate called Company Directors Limited and Temple Secretaries Limited controlled over 205,000 shell companies that moved in and out of that dishevelled building. If anybody was to look at this building through Google Maps UK, the picture shot shows an arched mid-street property with dishevelled blinds, but if you look beyond those blinds, because I went down to have a look at those,
I'm going to.
yeah, is that within that building there were empty desks, boxes lying all over the floor, which shows that this is not the hive of a business activity.
Yeah.
This looks just to be what it is, which is a setup boiler room. Okay. As an engineer dismantling high complex machinery, I found it very interesting to be able to dismantle and understand how each part plays, whether it be a company director or a corporation that's formed, to find out how it works in the bigger system of organised crime. And so I took it upon myself, even back in South Africa, to look at it and peel back the veneers of lies and deceit, where these corporations are used to steal hundreds of billions of pounds. Not just in the United Kingdom, but from all over the world. And that's what they're doing. And they're doing it today. They will be doing it tomorrow. Because nobody has taken action, although this has been reported to the Met Police, Serious Fraud Office, the FSA, the HMRC. All these people have been contacted to show that there is forensic evidence that address and its satellite boiler rooms are complicit in setting up and structuring billion-pound organised crime. And that's linked to corrupt politicians, because those addresses, the satellite addresses for 788, 790 Finchley Road, which are all interconnected. One is called Winnington House to Woodbury Grove, North Finchley, and the other one is Ascot House to Woodbury Grove, North Finchley. So that when you do the research on those two addresses, one is a ground floor flat and one is a top floor flat. But given this exotic name of Winnington House and Ascot House, and that's what people don't understand, how you can steal billions by structuring companies through those flats, and that's what's happening. They're all satellite boiler rooms, which take those 205,000 shell companies and move them in a network.
5,000.
And that's why I say it's like a puzzle.
Yeah,
A spider's web.
Yeah.
So, having had that time to understand how it works, the system and the people involved, it was very easy for me to deconstruct each boiler room. The expose of Finchley Road affects every single person walking, all over the country, and they've got no idea. Hospitals, nurses, the health services, cancer wards. This affects everybody, and yet nobody is willing to use this material to confront the politicians, because trust me, I have it all on record, all audio, video recorded, that one day these politicians like Tony Blair, Ed Miliband, I have it on record, audio, video recorded, where I handed over documents that would have locked them all up. This material is based upon documents recovered from company's house. There's no better. It involves companies, registrations, directors, who they were, how many companies they have, where those companies are, how much financial losses they made. This is where the people who walk the territories around here have no understanding. Well, they're struggling to make £6 an hour. How these people are board of directors of companies, of fake oil, gas and mining companies, where they input politicians and grandees and VIPs and pay them £70,000 a year as a non-executive director of a fake oil, gas and mining company, which doesn't exist. That's my question to the politicians, is because they protect it because they're self-implicated and would all go to jail. Quite a while ago I was contacted by Swiss-French investigators. Because I had posted on a web blog details of certain company directors and their shenanigans in Australia linked to £1 billion mining fraud. And what I had published was my research work on a specific set of directors of a company called Uramin Inc. And Uramin Inc. was formed in Namibia and South Africa from where they purchased a defunct care and maintenance uranium mine. This was a loss-making mine where the majority of its high-grade assets had been removed and smelted and then passed on. However, it was lying dormant. It was a non-productive, highly in-debt company, which they purchased for $100,000, the directors. Specifically, the main men were a guy called Sir Samuel S. and Jonah, a Ghanaian. And his cronies, James Mellon was another guy, and they purchased this care and maintenance mine for $100,000. 6 months later, they sold it for $2.5 billion. That's a good markup, isn't it? And they sold it to a French public listed company, a nuclear energy company called Areva Nuclear Fuels France. The head of Areva was a woman called Miss Anne Lavereau, and her husband was also on the board of directors. His name was Oliver Frick. Now, I'd written all about Uramin Inc. and its directors as being involved and complicit in multiple other mining frauds. So these French-Swiss investigators contacted me. Specifically, one man was the main contact. And they asked me to give them more evidence on other shenanigans conducted by the same board of directors. And I led them to a whole host of disclosures made by other people, but has never put it all together. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So I was the one that put it all together. And over a period of 2 years, these people contacted me. I provided them material. And I found out that the French police started to look at this as a fraud. They fired Miss Anne Laveron from the board and her husband. She took the French and Swiss investigator team to court for defamation, slander and libel. They lost 3 cases. Miss Anne Laveron.
Okay.
So it shows that my
credibility,
and I've been thanked. I've got the correspondence from them thanking me so much for giving them the information. And it said victory for the RAF, which I thought was very poignant. I would hope that the information that I've been passing out to various politicians, which is all on the record, that these politicians will then be held to account for misconduct in the public office. And then they will face a prosecution and jail, because they have been, in the public interest, deceptive to exposing massive organised crime linked to Finchley Road. In my research, I have records and detailed forensic documentation on over 1,300 fake oil, gas and mining companies, including the latest discovery of 50 to 100 billion barrels of oil just south of Gatwick Airport, where a gentleman made a disclosure on BBC News that they had discovered this huge strategic oil find. His name is David Anthony Lenigas, if he wants to take me to court. Because unbeknown to the population of the United Kingdom, this strategic oil find is a Ponzi scam.
Massive oil field discovered near Gatwick Airport in the UK. A UK oil exploration company has said it has discovered oil reserves of up to 100 billion barrels beneath the south of England in the area near Gatwick Airport. UK oil and gas investments said up to 30% of the country's oil demand could be met from the area by 2030.
I assure you, they will milk this for billions. There is no oil there. None. It's a scam.
This is information that people can check, that you've said before.
Yeah.
No one's ever decided to pull you for slander or to take you to court.
Well, Andrea Davison did, but she fled the country before her criminal trial. And left us in limbo for 5 years, where we fought out going to the Royal Courts of Justice to fight her defamation claim, where she said that everything that I publish on the internet was untruthful, lies, conspiracy. So where is she now? Convicted on 26 of 27 charges of criminal fraud, theft, money laundering. Well, here's the challenge to anybody that watches this. Here's the challenge. Bring any one of the people that I would name as being complicit and put them before me in a panel to answer my questions based upon the documentation. They won't come because they will all go to jail. Where's the evidence? Well, here it is. Here's the evidence. You won't get better forensic evidence than Company's House, and it's all there. This is just one little clip. So let's take these people to task. The BBC.
I'll give you that. I'll stand one-on-one with you and sit down and work through a sequence of documents.
Let me have a word with my editorial team down.
Okay, no problem. Excuse. No.
I'll have a chat with you one-on-one. Yeah.
No, that's not a problem. I thank you very much for that.
All right, not a problem at all.
So I've handed a few forensic documents over. They're going to do their own investigation, and with a bit of luck, things will progress from there. But that's what I'm hoping for, is that we plant a seed that these people will not get away. They are public servants. They will be accountable to the people of this country. We've just had an austerity march where 250,000 people marched to Downing Street. What did it achieve? I'll tell you what it achieved. Absolutely nothing.
BBC didn't even show
No. But what I say to all the organisers of the austerity march is that they should contact me, and we go to Finchley Road, and we demand that the government look at what's happening behind these dishevelled buildings. Ian Cuthbertson operates out of that building, and he was a director of Anglesey Mining PLC. So there's a company, a mining company, for 31 years that has never mined a thimbleful of dirt, that has made losses sometimes of £31 million a year, that have never done anything. And they still get council grants. Can you imagine? There's the people in Anglesey struggling for employment. And yet I made those disclosures on record in Anglesey at their memorial hall. It's all video, audio recorded. However, the challenge is there for the people out there to understand how these people have been milking hundreds of billions of pounds that is desperately needed by the health services, hospitals, police forces, fire services, and yet nobody is doing a thing. They need to wake up, these people, very quickly.
You know, I've seen this man's service record. I've just sat, before we came down here and had a cup of tea, I've seen his commentations, his service record. Well, I mean, you're an open book, Gordon.
Open. Anybody wants to confront me, let them do it in a court of law, where I can disclose the documents that will all put them all in jail, including Tony Blair, Ed Miliband, and David Cameron. Because that man, he shouldn't be walking around deciding where they're going to send the military to do their next dirty deeds. He should be deciding what meal he's going to have in prison.
For some time now, RAF personnel like these have been hitting IS targets in Iraq, but not in Syria. So in his attempt today to make the case to change all that, the Prime Minister's task was to provide the answers to some pretty big questions. Like, what difference will our limited military contribution make? Will any of it actually make us safer at home?
I can't stand here and say we're safe from all these threats. We're not. I can't stand here either and say that we will remove the threat through the action that we take. But do I stand here with advice behind me that taking action will degrade and reduce that threat over time? Absolutely. And I've examined my conscience, and that's what it's telling me.
The Prime Minister set out a bigger strategy, of which more British airstrikes is only one part. It includes support for Syria's moderate ground fighters, who he says are 70,000 strong.
You famously told the Commons, and you've repeated it again today, that the Joint Intelligence Committee estimate there to be 70,000 moderate fighters whom we can support. So why won't you or the Defence Secretary name the supposedly moderate groups?
All I can say is, you know, we had an NSC discussion. The JIC, the Joint Intelligence Committee, produced the figure. I, questioned and probed on the figure. They said they thought 70,000 was the best estimate of non-extremist opposition fighters. The Americans have said that is within their estimates. To be absolutely transparent with you, the Americans said it was towards the top end of their estimates. Yeah. And, you know, if you want to say that the JIC, you know, mislead me or Parliament.
Well, of course we don't want to say anything particular.
You know, but you would always, I mean, you're saying no one's going to believe me unless I give more detail.
David Cameron went to India with a select trade setup to orchestrate, this is all my research as well, to orchestrate a £1 billion deal on behalf of a public listed company. That company was Cairn Energy, Cairn India, and an Indian company called Vedanta Resources.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah, it's a pollen. And David Cameron interceded on behalf of Cairn Energy, where his Conservative Party donor, Sir William Bill Benjamin Bowring Gamble was a big Tory party. Was specifically the chairman of Cairn Energy, where David Cameron used his position as Prime Minister to force the Indian government to do the deal, the financial deal, and use his pressure as a Prime Minister. Well, that was a £6 billion deal. £6 billion. Tell me where that money has gone. Because when you look at the corporate records, that money has been silted out into hundreds of subsidiary companies and disappeared. Do you understand? Yeah. So if you want to visit Scotland's biggest boiler room, it's called 50 Lothian Road in Edinburgh, and it's a mail forwarding address where Cairn Energy and not Vedanta, but all the subsidiary, Capricorn Oil, Capricorn Resources, Capricorn Exploration, all the Cairn subsidiaries where they moved that 6 billion and dispersed it. Amazing, 6 billion gone like that. I've named the guy, Sir William, his name Bill, Benjamin Bowring Gamble. Let him call me to court and answer where that money's gone, that 6 billion. Well, because he's resigned from Cairn Energy. Very nice, eh? I'm just a good fisherman, a reasonable engineer who took the time to look a bit deeper than what was thrown out there. Well, and what I found, say, 14 years ago made me sick. It made me physically throw up when I saw the name Margaret Thatcher and Sir Mark Thatcher on a police file, who was being wined and dined by the people who stole my partner's money in the Carlton Hotel in Johannesburg. That was shortly before the Equatorial Guinea coup. Okay. And it was said to me that some of the money stolen in that fraud was linked to the covert arms purchasing in Zimbabwe, which Mark Thatcher was involved in. If I'm wrong, I will apologise, and they can send me to jail. However, if I'm right, they must be prosecuted by the police for fraud, theft, and money laundering. And then the police can recover under the proceeds of crime that money which is being hidden in the British Virgin Islands, Barbados, Panama, Cyprus, Gibraltar, and help the National Health Service. This is what I want to do. I want to leave a legacy of information that people can use that information. Not that I can become a multi-billionaire. As I said, I've been involved in £1 billion fraud and been thanked for it. I haven't had one penny. No. And if I take it, I'm just as bad as they are.
Exactly,
I'm doing it to make people aware of what's going on around.
I know there's no financial reward for it. I know that.
You know my financial circumstances.
You did.
It's not pretty, eh?
No, it certainly isn't. You're struggling.
And I got pain where you wouldn't believe I got pain. Trust me.
Every time you turn the BBC on, here they are, the bums and the scroungers, the bums, and that's how they show.
That hurts me, eh? They will make a programme about Benefit Street, and yet they wouldn't make a programme about 7887 Finchley Road. This is why I confronted the BBC. I said, you were talking about industrial organised crime operating out of the City of London. There's the address. Send your panorama team round with a camera and then do 10 minutes research on the internet and Company's House and tell me I'm an idiot. Because you won't.
But they'll show some poor bugger who's robbed 200 quid
and they'll put somebody inside for urinating in a public place because he's had a bladder fall. And or Dame Margaret Beckett, because you were handed documents which you were asked on behalf of a constituent to disclose in Parliament for answers to those questions, which would lock up Tony Blair and David Cameron. And you did it. You did not do that for your own political survival and that of your parties. Trust me.
Well, you can't get any.
There's,
I mean,
yeah. Well, unfortunately, I'm a bugger for telling the truth. I never had the education to go in as an officer in the Royal Air Force. However, I was a worker. I was an engineer.
Yeah,
I'm a worker.
yeah.
I wasn't hiding a ditch and shitting in a plastic bag, excuse my French, as a ground soldier. I wasn't that. I was an engineer. I love to fix things, not destroy things. And that's always been my ambition, is as I saw the things that were wrong, I want to fix them.
Well, I've seen commentations there.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter.
Saved through what?
Yeah, well,
through fixing things. No, I mean,
yeah.
it has to be said.
Well, look, every member of Her Majesty's Armed Forces does so with pride and honour in their country. Yeah. And they carry their duties throughout the world in the belief of the government that send them to go do the dirty
of course, yeah.
But on reflection to my military career, when I went out into the Persian Gulf, a place called Mazira and Sharjah, and understood what we were doing there, we were acting as a military mercenary force to protect sheikhs and oil reserves for those sheikhs. Do you understand?
Yes,
but
yes.
that only reflects upon me as an individual. I don't ask other members of the forces to sort of throw their allegiance to the wind. They are doing a job to protect this country. However, they should look at what we are doing in Afghanistan.
You know, there's more.
And Iraq. What did we do there? We destroyed it. We destroyed a sovereign country, albeit with the threat of Saddam Hussein. But we destroyed it. That infrastructure now, the people are fighting within themselves. We have created more damage by interceding against Saddam Hussein. And they were all involved with George Bush.
Oh, yeah,
they were doing deals with Iran and Iraq.
There is more servicemen coming home and committing suicide.
I know, I'm deeply saddened. Yeah, I'm deeply saddened.
Wars now.
Yeah, I'm
They're
deeply
left
saddened.
on the streets with nothing.
I often looked at the repatriations of dead servicemen who gave the ultimate sacrifice.
This is what people
and understand where were all the politicians to greet them, to come home to say thank you for your ultimate sacrifice for this country. Not one, eh? They were all shunting it up someplace or blabbing about how they were going to save this world. Not just saving it, they were robbing it blind. I was posted on promotion in Germany from RAF Larbrick across to the station weapons dump. There they held £1,000 conventional bombs, 500-pounders, laser-guided paveway bombs, and nuclear, which was the 15-kiloton WE-177s. And the machinery that I was in charge of was the lifting capacity mechanisms for lifting and loading onto various aircraft pylons, wing pylons, and revolving bomb bays of the Buccaneer. They were called M4 jammers. But gave me access into the SSA, where all this naughty stuff that creates big holes in the ground and does a lot of damage. And so I had a personal interest, and I was contacted in 2010 by a retired civil engineer who read a lot of my work, because I'd uncovered a lot of the corruption to the corridors of power in Westminster, and he wanted to highlight his knowledge and involvement and the death of Dr. David Kelly, which is very important to the world, because his material has been censored for the next 70 years. Well, it won't be 70. The reason they've sanctioned that to be held back is that all the politicians who are corrupt will then long be dead. All these right honourable lords, ladies, all the corrupt scumbags will all be dead. I want to say on record that the person who has been corresponding with me for 5 years is the most, in my eyes, the highest regarded civil engineer that I've come across in my life. Okay. He's an ex-Rolls-Royce design engineer, patent designer of a lifting device that was specifically designed around lifting 20-foot shipping ISO containers. And his involvement came about by being asked by two scumbags. One is a guy called John Arnold Breedenkamp, to facilitate the covert arms trade to Iraq and Iran using his lifting unit. And he eventually he was flown out to Pelendaba, which is just north of Pretoria, which I know quite well, which was the nuclear facility research laboratories where Israeli and South African scientists developed nuclear weapons. And so this would create a massive sort of friction with the Israeli government if this gets known. And what happened was that with the advent of the demise of the apartheid government and being pressurized by the Western world to accept that the ANC government, the communist government, which were mostly trained in Russia and all these things, was that they would be handing over 9 battlefield-ready, gravity-drop, 20-kiloton nuclear bombs, which were all in usable state. And so there was an agreement where they would send out a delegation from the United Kingdom, and I am told by my source they included a young conservative, David Cameron. All right, so 1989, 1990. And he went with Dr. David Kelly, and I'm told Sir Ken Warren, was believed to be Sir Ken Warren, an aeronautics engineer, to go to Pelendaba to arrange the removal of those 9 serviceable 20-kiloton nukes. So there was a lot of conservatives that thought, oh, we can make some money out of this. 6 were sent to Chicago under the watch of Dr. David Kelly for decommissioning, where the fissile material would be removed and sent back to South Africa, where they could do a big PR exercise to say that they'd stopped their nuclear weapon development and years of fissile material. Do you understand?
Yeah.
However, a bunch of people, conservatives, thought we can make some money. We need 3 nuclear weapons, these 3 remaining of the 9. And what we will do is we'll do a cash deal, but we'll also make it a fraud. Because what they did was they arranged in a UOR, urgent operation requirement, to purchase 3 cylinders from Arms Corps, South Africa, for millions of pounds. Yeah, it's a very dangerous subject. However, my source is so qualified, competent and authentic that I trust this man with my life. And he has related everything in stage by stage. What happened is that a load of grandees decided to pay for cash, where they would pay cash when these weapons were moved from Pelendaba down to Durban Harbour. The loading was arranged by Dr. David Kelly into weapons cradles, loaded into 3 individual containers, bolted to parallel lines in 20-foot ISO containers. And then they were shipped as part of the consignment with a 9, 6 plus 3, down to Durban Harbour, where cash was exchanged to allow the 3 to be diverted to Oman under the watch of Dr. David Kelly. This is what I'm saying. Those 3 weapons were then stored in a transport facility in these 20-foot ISO containers, should they be needed as a retaliatory attack against Saddam Hussein. You understand? If he used chemical or bioagents, we would go and nuke Baghdad. And I'm told, Saddam was told us, that if they went, you're going to get really, there's going to be a big blue blinding flash, and you better stick your head between your legs and kiss your backside goodbye. You and your people. So there's nothing worse than a nuclear attack. However, it didn't come about. Dr. David Kelly went back to arrange the onward movement from Oman to Chicago for decommissioning of the three. When he opened the containers, they were gone. I'm told. That meant somebody had moved and stolen 3 Conservative Party purchased nuclear bombs, which they lost. I'm told by my source that they were moved by the person that orchestrated the deal between Arms Corp and Astra Holdings in the United Kingdom. And he was John Arnold Breedenkamp, and he worked with a guy called Billy Rautenbach, also Rhodesian, because you know the Tories always supported Ian Smith. So there was a great link there between Special Forces and the old Conservative grandees. So when Dr. David Kelly found these things were missing, he knew whose names were all on the paperwork, and hence he decided to slit his wrists and take a few disciplines. This is the vilest bunch of crooks that you can ever imagine, who stand before and tell us, you know, where we're going to next fight on behalf, go and slaughter a few 100,000 more people. But David Cameron should ask where the Conservative Party, in this deal, were bunged 17.8 million, which is the money trail record back to those 3 nukes, the dirty deal, which was a kickback in the overcharge to the British Treasury for the purchase. Do you understand? That's where the Tory grandees made their money, was they then paid cash for them at Durban Harbour, which was then onward sold to the British government at a highly inflated price. And that's where they made their money. So the 17.8 million was, this information was passed to the Labour Party. And Dame Margaret Beckett, and many others, including Lord Douglas Hoyle, involved with Miss Andrea Davison, do you understand? It's all is that they confronted the Tory party in Hansard, in Parliament, which is recorded in Hansard, and said where and who was the donor of this 17.8 million. Well, the Tories just laughed. They said, well, find out for yourself. It was the kickback from John Arnold Breedenkamp.
And that was their answer to it?
Yeah, find out yourself. And so, I know for a fact that Dame Margaret Beckett and Chris Williamson and all your cohorts are guilty of misconduct in public office, because I gave you this material to investigate in Parliament, and you did nothing. So there's a question to the people, the people of this country. Now those 3 nuclear weapons, I am told, moved into Iraq, and hence, believe it or not, when you lose 3 battlefield 20 kiloton nuclear weapons, you will scorch this earth to look for them. Because the consequences were, what could the Tory party say? They had just lost 3 nukes that were covertly purchased, and a lot of Tory grandees made a shitload of money. Do you understand? So they couldn't say anything. So I believe that the Labour Party have been blackmailing the Tory party, and it's been a tit-for-tat sort of blackmail. These people need to go to jail.
Definitely.
David Cameron, Gordon Brown, Tony Blair, they should all be dragged up and to face these accusations. Where those 3 nuclear bombs, I know what for a fact. One was detonated by North Korea on the 25th of May 2009. That leaves 2. So, under the Nuclear Explosions Act, of which I'm, say, an ex-serviceman that worked with nuclear weapons, I understand that anybody that's responsible or has knowledge of the whereabouts and cause for a nuclear explosion in peacetime should face an inquiry and prosecution, and if found guilty, go to jail for 25 years under the Nuclear Explosions Act. Now, because David Cameron's involved, Dame Margaret Beckett, Chris Williamson has knowledge of, this inquiry should also bring about where those other 2 weapons. Do you understand?
Course,
Why did we go to war with Iraq when it was said that they were WMD?
It concludes that Iraq has chemical and biological weapons, that Saddam has continued to produce them, that he has existing and active military plans for the use of chemical and biological weapons, which could be activated within 45 minutes, including against his own Shia population, and that he is actively trying to acquire nuclear weapons capability.
We need honest politicians who have integrity, who want the best for the people, not corrupt.
There are some, you know.
So do I. If you can find them, I've tried for the last 6 years, where I've taken the documents. I've asked, please explain this. Go to Parliament. You're the representative. They're all complicit. Now, as you say, where do we take this? Well, it's just on record now. I mean, you do with it what you want. All I'm saying is, I'm just an individual like yourself who has had a bit more exposure in the real life and being actually involved. When you're involved in it, you can't run. I love fishing. I'm a fly fisherman. I used to saltwater fly fish, you know, out in South Africa. Biggest fish I caught was 53 kilogram off the beach at night with a Rapala in my underpants, wading into the breakers with nasty sharks around and catching game fish in the first breaker. And I love fishing, you understand? Just a guy. A place called Cwmbran, near Newport, where I grew up with a very close-knit community who would do anything for anybody in the street. Everybody knew each other. If there was trouble or death or something, they all congregated. They were lovely people.
Good people.
And if you went up into the Rhondda Valley, those people, dour, real hard-working mining people, their entertainment was a couple of pints, you know, a packet of fags, a holiday to Butlins. That was the maximum they ever. But they were good, honest people, and they've been cut to pieces by politicians. Trust me. And that's why I want to bring out the mining side fraud, which those people that are suffering to get their benefits with lung diseases would. If I can point to individual companies that have been stealing hundreds of billions of pounds under the auspices of being a mining company, where they've got no employees other than the directors. Do you understand? They just use it as a vehicle to steal billions. Let that money go to those people in Wales. The high unemployment in Anglesey. That's what I want. David Cameron. His great-grandfather was the head of the HSBC Bank. Never done a day's work in his life, eh?
His family money come from slavery, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, it all goes, HSBC Bank goes back to the days of the heroin triads. It's the movement of opiates to the United Kingdom. The Boxers' Rebellion. So, that was the money, and it's still being nailed for money laundering for organised crime.
Oh, yeah.
I believe this is the best way. You see, paperwork is a very boring subject.
Yeah,
and anybody that wants to trawl through realms of, you wouldn't believe my hard copy download library.
I can imagine, yeah.
It's 3 wardrobes, double wardrobes, full of dossiers on all these companies, all the directors. And one day I would hope that somebody will use this to bring these people to account. Be naive to what's going on. No. Just check some of this information. You'll find out that I'm very truthful.
I want to say something here, because I've seen you called a conspiracy theorist.
Oh, I've been called a lot more.
But you know something, right? Why would someone, I mean, you'd have to do that, you'd have to be a nutcase.
Well,
and you blatantly
anybody that wants right? Well, anybody that blatantly wants to take me to a medical tribunal and get an expert to check out the documents first and my history of where I've been and done, then they can, well, I'll do that quite gladly. However, I would just like to challenge any politician out there to confront me man to man and stand up before me and look at the material and then start an inquiry.
Oh, well, I think, I don't know, have we done it all, do you think, Gordon?
Well, I think there's enough there to make anybody...
It is, isn't it?
If you're a politician, to do a little bit of a wee-wee.
I
hope we switched it on.
It is. That's all recorded.